Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending where you're dialing in from. We're very happy to host another Dazzle webinar for you today. Today on the topic of life cycle assessments. We will give the participants another minute or so to dial in. I see we already have 21 people live, which is very exciting. In order to test if my audio is working and everyone can hear me well, I just want to ask if the people who are already dialed in can type the country they're from in the chat box. If that's possible for everyone to just write the country they're dialing in from in the chat box. Okay, perfect. Let's see, United Kingdom, Ireland, Romania, Portugal, so that's a good sign. Netherlands. Super. Thanks so much, everyone. And very exciting to see all these different countries. We have 41 people live. It's 1 minute past 4 p.m. CAT. So I think I will just start with some practicalities for today before we will actually dive into the session. So again, a warm welcome to everyone who is joining us today on the topic of life cycle assessments. Very quick introduction about who we are as an organization and why we host these webinars. So we are Dazzle. Basically what we do is we help sustainability teams globally with the right resources at the right time. So we help them connect with expert freelancers, such as on the topic of life cycle assessments, to scale their sustainability initiatives and help them with the right experts at the right time as sort of a staff on demand concept. And we are extremely happy to be here today and host these sessions for you. Ideally, what we want for the meeting of today or for the webinar of today is for everyone to walk away with practical advice and inspiration when it comes to life cycle assessments. We host the topics of our webinar based on what you guys vote for. So also towards end of the session, there will be another poll where you can vote for the topic you would like to tackle, like us to tackle next. I think these options are CDP, CSRD, science-based targets, and a few other options where you can choose from. And yeah, we are super excited again to host a session for you and to dive into the practicalities of life cycle assessments today. With me from the Dazzle team is Farah, and I will just hand over to you as you will be leading today's session mostly.
Sure. Thank you so much, Robert, and welcome to everyone. We're very excited about having you here on this call with us. A very brief introduction about myself. I'm the Global Community Manager of Dazzle, and I'm essentially responsible for the entire life cycle of community management, from recruitment to engaging the community. And we have a very cool community, truly global, comprising of 200 top sustainability professionals from more than 40 countries, speaking more than 50 languages in our community. So it's truly global, truly amazing. And today, with the amazing powerhouse panel, we're going to discuss LCA, which is a very important topic, essentially about the environmental evaluation of products from production to disposal. And I'm not an LCA expert, so I'm very much looking forward to this discussion, and very much looking forward to learning quite a bit from the professionals in this sphere. And with me on this session is our panel comprising of Nico, Tiziano, and Paul. And I'd like to ask them to introduce themselves, since I'm sure they're going to do it much better than I do. Tiziano, do you want to go first?
Yeah, thank you. So, and thank Dazzle for this opportunity. Tiziano Piccardo, I'm a climate lead and let's say carbon emission lead for Marelli, which is a automotive tier 1 company providing components to major car makers around the world.
Amazing, thank you. Paul, do you want to go next?
Yes, sure. My name is Paul van der Meer. I'm the Sustainability and Compliance Manager for Van der Valk Systems. We are a Dutch-based company that has been around for a long time, since 1963. We originate from the horticultural sector, and we are developer and manufacturer for systems in that sector. But also since 2009, we are active in the solar industry, and we produce solar mounting systems. And yeah, very interested to hear about today's session and to see if I can provide some valuable input for everyone.
I'm sure you will. Thank you so much, Paul. And Nico, one of our community members, a Dazzle freelancer. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. Thank you very much, Farah. I'm also happy to be here and share some insights and hopefully get a good discussion today. My name is Nico van Ede. I'm a Dutch-based environmental consultant. I work primarily on LCA, ESG, and greenhouse gas accounting. I've worked as an LCA consultant in various sectors, horticulture as well, and also manufacturing sectors such as the automotive industry. And also lately I've been working on the medical field where LCA is also a growing topic. So happy to be here and share some insights on that aspect.
Great. Thank you so much. And we're very happy to have all of you here on this session with us. I think next we wanted to do a bit of a pulse check with our audience, and we have added some polls to this call. I'm trying to launch them, but I'm not sure if it's working. Please let me know. Yes, please.
Let's see. Can everyone see the poll? Just maybe Farah to check from your side.
Yes, I can see it, definitely.
Great. So the first question is, how would you describe your company's use of life cycle assessments? We asked these questions to assess the maturity of the people who are dialing in today, so we can also tailor the conversation that we will be having, that will start in a few minutes, based on the answers provided by you. Second question is, what is your biggest challenge with implementing life cycle assessments? Different answers from more on the data side, the results, translating the insights into business decisions, or the communication part. So very curious to hear your take on that as well. And then your main goal for participating in this masterclass. And based on that and on the results of everyone, we can tailor the discussion as much as we can. As far as I can see now, we have around 40% of the people that has never used a life cycle assessment. So that's pretty interesting. With a mix, it's almost 50-50. It goes to 50-50 now live. I'm looking at the results too. That life cycle assessments are used occasionally for internal projects. So that's good for the panelists and ourselves to know. Biggest challenge with implementing life cycle assessments is collecting accurate data from suppliers. Surprise, surprise. And then the third question is what the main goal is for participating in this masterclass, and is understanding how other companies apply life cycle assessments. So I think we're definitely lined up with the right people here to go through that topic for sure. Super. So thanks everyone for your input, and then hand over back to Farah.
Yeah, sure. I think we can dive into the discussion. And Nico was kind enough to share some tips with us before this session that we also shared with our panelists, and we also deep dived into them a little bit. So the way we wanted to structure this discussion was sort of using those tips as a reference point, and then also getting some practical insights from both Tiziano and Paul. And the first tip that Nico shared with us was regarding the LCA journey: start small to build LCA experience. Nico, do you want to elaborate on that? What exactly you mean and what that means in practice?
Yeah, thank you very much. I can say a couple of words on that. I haven't seen it in practice yet. Sometimes in strategy you want to have the full environmental performance of your complete portfolio or assortment of products. I've never seen that happening. It's always you have to start somewhere, and if you start too big, you have the risk that it will become a very lengthy process. Can even have more than a year, can up to 2 years before you finish your first LCA project. And that can really have an impact on the motivation of your stakeholders there. What I see in practice is working quite well is we call it the screening LCAs, which means that you start with only a handful of key products, commercial products that you sell. And in that case, you get a good learning experience, and you know what kind of stakeholders that you can work with, so to say. And also, what is indeed the usability? So what do you want from your results? Which departments need them, and how do you want to communicate? So with a sort of a smaller, we call it indeed screening LCA project, you can indeed gain some experience and do it in a shorter period. It can be already 6 months, for example, which is sometimes a better strategy to start with. So that will be my
So if I understand this correctly, essentially what you're saying is select sort of like a sample of products that you want to pilot it with, and then based on the learning outcomes, duplicate results for other products in your portfolio. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct indeed.
Okay. And Tiziano, do you want to chime in perhaps with,
Yeah, I mean, in our case, for our company, I have to say we were a bit pushed versus this approach that Nico is picturing, because let's say that 3 years ago, our customers, so major car maker, starting requesting some LCA or product carbon footprint in a very vague way. But then after that, month after month, this request became more compelling and more concrete. So of course we had to focus on at the beginning on the cases where we had customers requesting. And what we did exactly, we tried to prioritize an LCA done with external support at the beginning on key products, or at least, let's say, to understand a little bit the various type of products that our company produces, what kind of opportunities and profile in terms of LCA could have. So we started there. And then, as Nico was mentioning, we understood how big the effort was and what we had to put in place in order to be able to be more effective. And we will discuss in the next points, but we realized that we had to build the internal know-how to do this kind of assessments, even if in maybe simplified way. Our customers are mostly requesting product carbon footprints so far, so not full LCAs, first of all. And usually they ask cradle to gate because they want our product carbon footprint to be the input for their own calculation. So they are interested in the cradle to gate of what we deliver to them. So that was, let's say, the natural development from starting understanding with external support, all the different technicalities of doing an LCA, and then, let's say, internalize and building know-how internally, focus on what we needed.
Hey, that's clear. Thank you. Paul, what was your experience like getting started with LCA?
Well, I very much recognize, I think, this process, because for us it was almost the same, although maybe it started a little bit later. So around 1.5 years ago, I think we got the first main requests to have these EPDs, the environmental product declarations, available for some of our products. As you know, we are making mounting systems, so a product for us is not really a single product, but it compiles from different components, so to say. So we started this learning journey basically myself by finding out what kind of information you have to actually provide as input. And it was very time and labor intensive, so to say, but I found it in the end quite useful, because it creates some good knowledge base, I think, on the LCAs itself. We had some external input as well through some consultant. But I found in the end that almost there I did not really have much help because I knew more about the actual LCA than that consultant. So that was a bad experience after all. But what I also underwrite is that we saw that if you have to repeat this process in that way that we did it for the first time for every type of system or product that we have, it will be much too labor intensive and time consuming. So we were really looking for doing this in a much more effective way for the future to be able to scale up.
So from what I'm hearing from both of you, it seems like the common learning point, learning outcome was how resource intensive the LCA process is. And I think that's very important for people to realize before they probably get started with their LCA journey.
And Farah, also, I would add, if I can, like the time part is also very important, because it depends also of the timing that you have. I mean, doing an LCA with an external consultant takes quite a lot because they need to understand the company and start collecting the data. For us, for instance, our customers are requesting this already at the request for quotes. So you have a couple of weeks, 3 weeks max, to give them a number that you then can confirm at start of production. So 2 or 3 weeks are nothing to set an LCA, so that was not impractical. So not only like the resources in terms of people on data that we will speak about, but also the timing was pretty critical to us to set up an internal system to do that.
Okay, that's very insightful. Thank you. And now that you're speaking about data, I think one of the things that Nico also mentioned is that it's absolutely critical to have a solid data strategy up front, since LCA is such a data-intensive process as well. Nico, do you want to tell us a little bit about what exactly a solid data strategy looks like, maybe in practice?
Yeah, thanks, Farah. Yeah, it's indeed one of the key points about LCA with the classic garbage in is garbage out. So the data quality is key to produce good results. And what you usually see is that the data strategy you develop indeed as you go with your product, like what kind of data do I need? For example, I've done an LCA of a complete vehicle, and then it consisted of the bill of materials of that vehicle, which was over 1,100 components. So it can be a very lengthy data bill, so to say, that you need. And then I think it's indeed good to sit together with your teams, with your data owners, to see where is the data? Is it in Excel sheets, or what kind of systems can I find it? And usually you need two kinds of data. So you need, in this case for the vehicle, your own, like what kind of components do I have in my vehicle, for example. And then, do I have preferably data from a supplier, so that they have an LCA, such as Picardo was mentioning. Indeed, if you have a supplier that is also active on LCA, they can deliver that to you. But if not, you need to come up with the best others, so to say, other options. And then it will be really the work of for example, an LCA expert or a colleague that is educated to go to the LCA databases and to see what is the best fit. For example, if I have a steel component that goes into my car, I ideally want to ask my supplier. But if not, you have to see, hey, is it recycled steel? Where does it come from? And is there a good match to make to calculate the impact of that component? But it's very good to sit. What are the data sources and options, and to work with a sort of a hierarchy. So what is the ideal option, and where, if it's not possible, what is our best alternative, so to say.
It sounds like a fairly complex process from what I'm hearing. And one of the tips that you also mentioned was that it's also critical to decide on the software and resource approach. And the reason why I want to bring it into this discussion is I feel there's a big overlap between the data and how you're managing and collecting it. So do you have any tips on how to utilize software specifically for data collection, and what do you usually advise your clients?
Yeah, some softwares, they have indeed built-in database access, so you can access the background data from that software. For example, EcoEvent is of course a well-known database on LCA, but it is paid. But there are certain software options where you have access immediately when you buy that software, so to say. So then it's sort of a two package. You have both access to the data and you have access to a calculation software that you need for LCA. There's several options. You can go for open source software, but I wouldn't advise that regularly to companies because it requires a lot of handling, a lot of extra expertise. Or you have sort of more complete packages where you can, in a simple way, create LCAs basically.
Great, thank you. That's very helpful. I think data is usually the biggest pain point in any sustainability topic, but I feel it's very, very relevant for LCA specifically. So I'm very curious to hear what Tiziano and Paul's experience was with when it comes to collecting and managing the data. Tiziano, would you like to tell us about your experience?
Yeah, well, yes. I mean, I agree with Nico regarding, the LCA data that you have to, secondary data that you have to get from databases if your suppliers are not fully prepared to provide the data. But another angle that I would like to add is also like the quality of the internal data that we have. Like in our company, we have, whatever is linked to the process. So energy consumption within our facilities, waste generation, water usage. So all those kind of data. Luckily enough, Marelli was already prepared to collect those information from production locations. So we had already people trained to provide those data and report them monthly. But the angle that needs to be taken from an LCA perspective, we found was slightly different because Marelli was collecting that mostly for external reporting, GRIs, sustainability report. And those data were actually including overheads, which at product level, you shouldn't see. Like, if we speak about waste, canteen waste, for instance, shouldn't be within the waste that you consider for the production of your product, or same for energy, right? So we would like to isolate exactly the energy related to the production and not counting offices or, canteen again, whatever is your premises outside. So that's, on one side, we were already covered because we had already a structured way to collect this information and make them accessible through internal databases. But on the other end, I feel we still have work to do in terms of quality because we really would like to isolate what is, the energy consumption of one specific machine, for instance, that we use for our production. We are not yet there because we do not have energy meters and data collection everywhere, although there are a lot of miracle software that they sell outside there, like managing online all the consumption. But then if you don't have meters, then it's pretty useless. So still some way to go there, but I strongly agree that the data part, both from secondary data, but also primary data from your premises, is key to have meaningful LCAs and product carbon footprint calculations.
I do remember from the poll results that one of the biggest pain points also seems to be collecting data from third parties, from suppliers. You talked about challenges with the primary data, sort of internal data. What is your experience like with collecting when it's not data that is generated on your premises, but rather you need to collect it from third parties?
Yeah, it's a problem. It's always a problem because you ask the data, but then you find suppliers that are ready to give you data, suppliers that never heard about this kind of information. So you start, let's say, prioritizing, calculating on their behalf sometimes. So you ask them the activity data that they have, like energy consumption, and you try to calculate for them. I think the biggest issue is not the suppliers that can't give you numbers, it's the suppliers that give you random numbers. because then you have to approach them in a way that you are not, in a diplomatic way. You are not telling them what you gave me is useless, but you need to help them grow in this direction. And that is how also building the know-how internally for LCA helped us, because we need people inside the company training our suppliers or speaking to our suppliers, trying to explain them what is really required, not just a random number that they can provide just to check the box,
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Paul, I could see you nodding along there. I feel like that was also your experience. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about it?
Yeah, true. Well, what I think is also, or what I found until now, which is important, also in discussion with the current consultant that we have, who is helping out a lot with this expertise, is that he said, well, really try to focus on the things that make most impact on the LCA itself, because there's really a danger, I think, in the collection of all the data, that you are spending a lot of time in collecting data that in the end makes almost a difference that you cannot even measure. So like in grams or in seconds or whatever. And if you then compare it to if you somewhere in the LCA have to use, let's say, more generic data from the EcoInvent database or whatever, it gets completely lost, or let's say blown away by that number that you actually also have to use in the LCA. So then you can really ask yourself, was this time that I've spent on this topic worthwhile or not? While maybe a quick scan on the LCA in the start could have already pointed you into the direction that you really have to focus on in the data collection.
Okay, that's very insightful. Thank you. I think we can move to the next tip, which is something that I find very interesting. And it says align LCAs with other sustainability initiatives, which I don't think sounds very natural, because usually I think LCAs are kind of performed in silo. And Nico, I'd love to hear what you mean when you say align LCAs with other sustainability initiatives and what it actually looks like in practice.
Yeah, so I think two things there. So one, I don't want to make it too technical, but what you sometimes see is that you do a greenhouse gas calculation, scope 1, 2, 3, and you have there a database that you use it to get also the background data that we just discussed. And then you have your LCA project, and you have completely different databases that you use there. So then you have sort of a misalignment in your company with sort of the steel that we use for greenhouse gas calculation has a completely different background than the background data that we pick for LCA. So that is a risk. There's sort of a misalignment risk. There's more on the technical side. But also what I sometimes see in practice is that LCA is sort of treated as a separate topic. Like, oh, we also need to do something with LCA. And I think it's very helpful to indeed look like, yeah, what can LCA bring us? Is it indeed for an internal project, or is it for legislation? Can it be commercially used? So to really make it a sort of a core practice actually in your sustainability field or in your sustainability activities. That will be, I think, my advice here actually.
That's interesting. Tiziano, what is your take on this?
Oh yeah, I mean, first of all, as I said, luckily enough, Marelli was already quite mature in terms of reporting. But when we started with the LCA, it opened up a completely different world, because we were already reporting scope 1, 2, and 3, as Nico was mentioning. But it's very important, and we found in the let's say in the following step how important it was to align our efforts like on suppliers engagement. So trying to get the right data from suppliers and trying to let's say to have them agreeing with decarbonization targets, for instance. We had to find a way to align this with the overall decarbonization strategy of the company, meaning, okay, we are focusing on one supplier, but this supplier has a very small impact on our scope 3.1 to go on technical details. So on the emissions related to our purchased goods and services. Is it really worth engaging with this supplier just because we have this little niche product, or should we engage with the bigger suppliers in order to decarbonize the company? There is a balance there, because on one side, we need to decarbonize our products specifically because our customers are requesting. So sure, we need to work, we need our research and development and purchase people to work on those specific products, so also on those suppliers. But on the other side, we need to calibrate our efforts so that we profit of this activity also for the overall decarbonization. Because Marelli, as many other companies, we are committed to the science-based targets. We have internal and externally published decarbonization targets. So we need to decarbonize, and we need to balance these two needs, I think.
That's very interesting. Thank you. Paul, what is your take on this?
Yeah, I think maybe not by coincidence, but actually for us, it's the other way around. We started with the LCAs, and that actually gave insights in how we can also, in an easier way, make our Scope 3 analysis. So one thing led to the other, and actually at the moment, I'm mapping that part as part of the LCA as well, because it gives, I think, a really clear structure on how we can make the Scope 3 better visible for external communication.
So you agree that it's essential to align the LCAs with sustainability initiatives?
Yeah, it's much more efficient to do it like that, I guess. So I agree.
Okay, great. Thank you.
If I can add on that, I mean, then in this exercise, it's very important that we keep in mind that we need to align those two streams, but not necessarily they are fully aligned, because let's say the adding up all the LCAs that you are doing will not necessarily give you your scope, your full emissions, because you have all those overheads, right? That I was mentioning before. So of course you need to be consistent, but it's also right that they follow different standards. The one is following the 14040 ISO, and the other one is the GHG protocol. So right now, currently, they are still different a little bit. So we need to live with that.
Okay, that's interesting. I didn't know that. So for LCA, you're supposed to use one standard, and for sort of overheads and the other type of emission, you're supposed to. And how do you? That sounds like a challenge. How do you tackle that?
I mean, luckily they are not so different. So they work together, and they are aligning step by step. So I see that most of the new requirements are coming, like getting to an alignment. But yes, indeed, as I was mentioning, whatever comes with your Scope 3, which is not necessarily linked to 3.1. So employee commuting, this kind of, or your car fleet internally, or your CAPEX investments are not necessarily something that you would fit in an LCA product-based. But the GHG protocol is currently requiring you to count and to count that in your overall emissions as company, corporate.
That's very insightful. Thank you for mentioning that. I think we can cover the last tip, and Tiziana, you already spoke quite a bit about it, and I think this is also a very important one: engaging the right internal stakeholders early on in the journey. Nico, since you're the one who gave us this tip, do you want to elaborate how to do that exactly?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of different, per organization, of course, it differs, but I think it's always good to train indeed your organization, as was mentioned also earlier in this meeting. So, for example, I did it for one project where we organized some webinars as well, because LCA, it is a bit of a technical subject. It requires a bit more knowledge, in my experience, than a greenhouse gas calculation. So a bit more aspects related to it. And what I usually see in companies is that indeed sometimes people have a lot of, for example, engineering teams. They have the perfect knowledge and expertise about their product and the product data, but I think its first task would be to educate, to also educate them on LCA. So they are also enabled to then work in a good way on the data needs for LCA. So for example, again, for that vehicle LCA that I did, so we had an engineering team that knew a lot about indeed materials and all kinds of codes related to components, but the weight of the components wasn't clearly documented in the system, and also the supplier origin. And those are two key components that you need for an LCA actually. So of course you first have to clearly train your organization what is actually needed in terms of data, but also in terms of setting boundaries and methodology choices. I think that would be a good first step, and do that as early as possible. So also, as I mentioned, the screening LCA could be a perfect project to do that as early as possible. So you have the more knowledge, the better the decisions you can make on this topic later on.
And on top of the obvious things like, there's an overall raising of awareness across the organization, what would you say are the tangible value adds of engaging internal stakeholders? Like, does it help the process get more efficient, maybe shorten the time, or have you ever encountered any, like these are the benefits of doing this early on?
I think, as you usually mentioned, indeed, I think we are as well that you start with an LCA, and in the end you think, hey, it's good if we make it an annual process, because there are always new products that come to the market, regulations change, LCA standards change as well. So I think that's a good benefit there. But I think also to go on LCA strategically. So how do we place it with other business demands and also on other sustainability demands? I think it was mentioned well by Paul as well that you don't need to have 100% score on every small data need. You need to really focus your limited efforts. So like what is the also the product phase or product component that contributes the most, and really start there to optimize it. So then you have a very reliable LCA, but also an efficient process internally. I think, and that works very well if you start early with that process in your organization.
Great, thank you. Paul, I'd be curious to hear what your experience has been, since you said you started with LCA and sort of, it triggered the rest of the things to come. How did you engage your stakeholders, and what was that like?
Well, one thing that we are currently planning, because we actually, I think, right in that process at the moment. But one of the things that I'm preparing now is with the software we use, we can make the LCA very, visible on what the various impact areas are. And together with our R&D team, we want to make some sort of example cases of some design decisions that they make in, for example, the type of material that they use or the type of process we use in the manufacturing, that they can easily see, okay, this if I make this selection, it will have this and this impact. And in that way, this is internally to make a decisions, but what we actually also want to do with the LCAs, because I mean that's the purpose, I think, in the end for the whole exercise, is we want to make visible to our customers that we make a certain decision, not only to make a good appearance, but really with scientific based information and validation behind it on what actually the impact is of the choices that we make. And that sometimes we, for that reason, select a different material than maybe one of the other suppliers in the market. But I think that is the only way to have a sort of, fair motivation for your product to sell it on those topics.
Okay, thank you. That's interesting. Tiziano, you also emphasized quite a bit the importance of engaging the internal stakeholders. So I'd be very curious to hear how exactly you achieved that and what was the outcome.
Well, at the beginning, it was we had to organize top-down governance. So basically identifying in all the different functions internally who would be the champion of this unknown topic of LCA or product carbon footprint. That was not necessarily, let's say, well received by everyone, because that was just another hat, another additional task that you give to people who are already overloaded. But I have to say that after the first, let's say, the first reactions, luckily enough, our company is full with good engineers and research and development people who are in the technicalities, I would say, and we found a lot of people that got really engaged with that, both from the R&D side, and from purchasing side. So, and they turned out quite quickly to be champions. So that was a good, let's say, a good experience. Also because I think that LCA is one of those topics which help bringing down silos, okay? Because you need functions to cooperate, to work together. Research and development need to tell us what they can eco-design in their new solutions, what kind of materials they can use. But on the other side, purchasing needs to, for instance, tell us how much these suppliers can provide, what are the options that these suppliers can offer. And then purchasing needs engineering or research and development to, let's say, scrutinize what our suppliers are telling us. So I think it's a very good exercise for a company if such interfunctional projects are not so frequent. So yeah.
Great, thank you. This was very, very valuable and very interesting for me because, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, I'm not really an LCA expert, but I feel like I'm already learning quite a bit. I think we're done with the discussion of the tips. What I'm also curious to hear from all of the panel participants is about LCAs going forward, so LCA in 2026 and beyond. Because obviously, as with everything, I feel like within the sustainability landscape, it's a very much evolving topic. So I'd like to start with you, Nico. Do you see any key trends emerging? Would you advise anything for the companies to sort of brace themselves for? And if yes, then how would you recommend them to prepare?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, first of all, on the legislative side, I see that there's a lot of legislation from the EU Commission, at least for the European attendance today. So this eco-design directive is, I think, a good one to mention. I think what we're moving to is what they call digital product passports, in which they really require you to do an LCA if you bring a product to the market. So to have all kinds of parameters, but yeah, the environmental performance is a key part of that. So I think that's being rolled out now in the next years actually. So that's more and more pressing, I think, for companies to dive into it and to see what is the effect on your company of this legislation. I think that's one. And what you see more and more is as well that first it was more a study to see what are the impacts for my company, what can I do with it, and you see that I see a shift to more integrated systems, software, so that you can more connected with other like ERP systems, or to have it like real time, like, oh, we have a bit of a different an update to our product. Oh, we can calculate real time the impact, and we can immediately upload it to other reporting systems that we have. So I think that's two key trends that I'd like to mention here.
Paul, what do you think? What do you think the future of LCA looks like?
Yeah, I completely agree. I think indeed, as a preparation for the digital product passport is definitely one of the motivators. But yeah, it was funny that you also mentioned the ERP, because that is for us, as we discussed it at the beginning of this project, our end goal that in the end it's the LCA value per product or per component is stored in your ERP system, and you can compile, for every offer that you make towards your customer or whatever, you already have a complete calculated, customized LCA or CO2 calculation ready for him. And I think it will be part, I think, in the future of those standard processes that the companies have.
Tiziano, would you like to add to that?
Oh yeah, I mean, what I see in the automotive sector is more and more, let's say, push for blockchain systems. So where the suppliers basically have to feed their own product carbon footprint, and they are responsible for the quality of that because they sign whatever they provide to you. So this is one trend that I see. And on the other side, I also see that the most advanced companies in terms of car makers, but I guess in many sectors, start adopting internal carbon pricing, which is a way to embed the product carbon footprint, or anyway, the footprint of what you provide to them within the economic evaluation among suppliers in tenders, for instance. And this is also pushing quite a lot in the direction of every company being very accurate, or as accurate as possible with the numbers they provide, because this is also getting, is not anymore an add-on, is getting more and more in the core of our competitiveness versus our competitors, as Paul was mentioning. So.
Great. I think that was very clear, and a clear alignment between what you are saying, all of you. So there's clearly a trend. I think we can move to the question and answer part, because there are quite a bit of questions. But before we do that, we'd like to ask the audience to vote for the next webinar's topic. I can see that Robert is already launched.
Yeah, so maybe for people who dialed in a little bit later, how we structure these Dazzle sessions, Dazzle webinars, is that you can decide which topic we tackle next. So there are 4 options in your screen right now. If there's a 5th topic you're thinking about, you can always email us or drop it in the chat for sure. We thought these would be hot topics for you guys. So let us know: CDP, Science-Based Targets Initiative, the CSRD, or the EUDR, which topic you would like us to tackle next. That's very much appreciated, and then we get to work. I see 24 responses in so far. Yeah, so I would really ask if you can take the time to still vote. That would be very much appreciated. And then slowly but surely we can move to the final part of the session in the last 30 minutes that we have, I think, Farah.
Yeah, sure. So since we seem to have time, I think I'm just going to go one by one. So the first question is, how do buyers assess the outcome of an LCA? For example, is assurance of correct LCA calculations a common practice? Competitors may play bluff and underscore your LCA score if there's no control mechanism. Any experience? Does anyone want to chime in here?
Yeah, I can maybe say a couple of words on that indeed. It's the big problem usually. So we done LCA, are we comparable with our competitor in a sector? What you then usually see is that there are, we call them product category rules. So really, for if you have a product and it's descripted, what do you need to calculate, what not, etc. That is ideal. That's not always the case. So sometimes you have a product and there are not clearly product category rules defined. Then you go back to more like a general standard, such as ISO requirements, which at least says, hey, you have followed some basic rules on LCA, so it gives a bit more body to your LCA. But indeed, for example, ISO, it recommends to have a third-party verification as well. So there are different steps to take there. But you see it more and more that indeed a verified LCA is necessary. For example, to have an APD, it's usually necessary to have. So I think that's a trend that's even rising. Today it's rising, and I think it's good to tackle that as well in your company. Like, what are the needs of my LCA? If you only want to have it internally to use it, it's not needed per se. But if you want to communicate your results, verification is a very necessary step, main.
Farah, if I can, I would add also. So I think it's, Nico said very good. Like, it depends on the the aim of your LCAs, because it depends also on the timing and resources you have to do that. Like you can either focus on a third-party validation for every single LCA that you do. You know, whatever you come out, someone is scrutinizing what you've done with all the assumptions, all the calculations. Or there is also another option, in the case of product carbon footprint, for instance, that is certifying the process. So basically, you are not certifying every single number that comes out of your calculation, but you are asking someone to scrutinize your process to collect the data of calculating your product carbon footprint, for instance, and it opens, let's say, a 3-year cycle certification, like similar to what the ISO 14001 is, right? So someone is checking on you every 3 years, and basically you can say, okay, the single number is not necessarily certified because, for instance, in our company, we're producing, hundreds during the year. And we are going to the direction instead of certifying our process and our methodology. And connecting to what Nico was saying, it's much easier when you have a product category rule because that gives you already direction on how to interpret it, assumptions, what kind of assumptions you have to take based on the product. In our case, we do not have, so to get a certification, you also have to create, let's say, your own product category rule internally and make it available externally.
A question just came in, which I think can be covered as part of this discussion, and it's asking what common LCA verification methods, schemes, requirements, and who verifies. And I'm assuming it's some, is it ISO themselves as an organization, or is it third-party assurance providers? Just to answer this question. So who's usually giving the third-party verification? Who's providing it?
Yeah, you have
Nico?
different. You have different verification bodies, actually, verificating organizations. So global, more global organizations, more local providers. You can get certified as an verification body, and then you can step in to do this, perform this step for companies. Depending on the standard that you use, it determines to what level you need to verify indeed your LCA.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and it is important.
Maybe to add. Sorry.
No, go on, Paul. Sorry.
Yeah, also for our type of product, so mounting system for solar panels, there's not really a defined, let's say, standard. But what we did, what was actually nice, was that we had a meeting with 2 of our main competitors here in the Netherlands, and at least between amongst ourselves, define a sort of standard that we would make the LCA for, and define a sort of certain system that, at least with the same parameters that we are working with, and. I'm not sure every competitor is willing to do that or, give that kind of info. But in our case, it was actually working fine, and they at least played by the same rules.
I just saw another question, which I think, Paul, probably also something you already touched upon when we were discussing. And the question is, when interacting with customers undergoing audits, do they typically rely on your documentation, or do they prefer to perform their own recalculations? And what challenges have you encountered from auditors regarding LCA?
Sorry if I understood the question correctly. So let's say audits at our customers?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, to be honest, I have not yet experienced that at the moment. We provided information, but we have not yet encountered that they've questioned our LCA or those kind of things. No.
Tiziano, do you have any experience with this?
Yeah. Some customers requested us to have a third-party verified LCA because they didn't have internal resources to do that. And as a tip and tricks for the community here, the only thing that we did was to look into the APD website, where there are lists of people who can do like a third-party validation of an LCA. Just they are recognized by the EPD, so you suppose that they know their job. But actually, so what happened to us in that case was that we started developing our LCA with an external consultant. That was one of the firsts we did. But we engaged quite heavily with the customer. So at the end of the day, the customer was in the process and they could check, stage by stage, what kind of assumptions we could get. We were really transparently sharing. And in the end of the day, they said, okay, we don't need a third-party validation because basically we did a third-party validation with you. That was a success story. But so sometimes we scrutinize the assumptions that we take, like what kind of scopes, they call it scopes, mutuating from the GAG protocol, but what we are including in our calculation, what kind of energy, renewable energy share we have. So those kind of assumptions, but we haven't got so much scrutiny on that side either.
Well, there's a question on this topic specifically for you, Tiziano, and the question is, are your customers also requesting roadmaps for future years? For example, PCF value calculations or estimations for 2030? And if yes, how are you managing this? We are seeing that this is now a widely spread request from automotive industry customers.
Yeah, indeed we do. So for some specific product, we are engaged, let's say, by our customers to provide some sort of decarbonization curves or trends, and we commit to certain targets of decarbonization as part of the engagement we do with them. Not many of them. Some of them are just requesting us the number and maybe a target value at 2030 or 2045, depending. But some others are engaging with us more, and we are taking the same approach with our key suppliers. So whenever we have a supplier that we really need to decarbonize, then we engage this way. So we ask them to provide us a decarbonization map with actions. So they have also to tell us what kind of actions they are taking, because we don't want just a curve on the paper, but we want to know how they are planning to reach those targets.
On this, and I'd be curious to hear this both from you and Paul, there's a question. Sometimes suppliers can only share partial usage data, and in many cases, they themselves source inputs from other suppliers further upstream. In those situations, I also rely on average manufacturing data from science papers. How do you handle situations where you suspect that supplier data is incomplete or not fully reliable? Do you also sometimes resort to literature?
Well, in our case, at the moment, we are then more aligning on the data coming from the EcoInvent database, for example, and checking those values if they are, let's say, more or less aligned. And if not, then that is for us more the source for the real value instead of what is coming from the supplier.
And Tiziano, do you have any recommendations here?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation as well. I mean, either you get meaningful data from suppliers and you can check, alignment with the databases you are using. But better to take literature numbers, like secondary data from databases which are recognized and certified and scrutinized by publicly scrutinized, than relying on some PCF, some product carbon footprint that you are not sure about. So at this stage, the level of maturity of suppliers is quite low. So either the supplier is already mature and gives you, let's say, evidence that they calculated in the proper way, or it's better to take the secondary data.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I think I can take one last question, probably Nico for you. What do you know about the allowed scientific proof of green claims directive? And what about raw materials with mass balance approach?
Yes, good question. On the Green Claims Directive, it's indeed been into effect since some time, with the purpose that you cannot easily, as was done 10 years ago, we have a carbon neutral product or any bold claims to have a bit of a hindrance to that. So you aren't allowed under European legislation to put such claims at the moment. I know there's been also, because of course in the EU there's a lot of discussions on legislation around CSRD and also around this one. So I think it's now, we can expect maybe a bit of changes to this Green Claims Directive. But for the past period, it has been indeed that no green claims can be made without substantial evidence, such as by LCA, so that it was specifically mentioned. Yeah, that it can be a good base or evidence for a claim to make. The second part, can you repeat that? What was the second part of the question?
What about raw materials with mass balance approach?
Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, I think in general there are of course multiple approaches to come to a good result, good LCA actually. This is one of them. I think it's a bit too long now in the webinar to go through it in detail actually on this method, but we can maybe tackle it on the the follow-up that the participants will get.
Okay, perfect. I think we covered pretty much all the questions actually, and we're at the end of our time. Thank you so much, Nico, Tiziano, Paul. I think this was very, very insightful. I personally learned a lot, and I think all the audience members did too. I will be handing over to Robert to wrap up the session, and thank you to all of you, and thank you to all the audience members for being with us today.
Absolutely. Just in time. So good to mention is still the link is in the chat section if you want to sign up already for the next webinar. We quickly counted the votes in the backhand. Next topic will be around the Science-Based Targets Initiative. So if you're interested in that topic, you can already sign up via the link in the chat. For now, also to respect everyone's time, as Farah said, Tiziano, Paul, Nico, thank you so much. It was really a pleasure, a great discussion, practical insights for everyone who was listening in. And then, yeah, we wish everyone a great end of the year. This was the last session of 2025. And then we see you next year. You will hear from us soon with the follow-up email and the recording. But for now, thank you to the panelists, Tiziano, Paul, and Nico. It was a great one.
You're welcome.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Thanks for the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Have a great evening,
Bye.
everyone. Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.